Welcome to De-Stress Your Business, the podcast where we show you how to get incredible results in your business without constant stress. I'm Alexis Kingsbury, a serial entrepreneur and founder at AirManual, and I'm joined by my co-founder and co-host, Paddy Mann. Morning, Paddy.
Good morning.
Good morning. So, what do you do when you have a great job candidate, but you can't hire them right now? If you're like most businesses, the answer is nothing. But doing nothing is missing an opportunity. On today's episode, we're going to look at how and why you should stay in touch with the great candidates that you're not able to hire the first time round. So, Paddy, why should we stay in touch with candidates that were great, but perhaps they weren't our number one candidate? Why should we stay in touch with them? And what's the stress that this is helping us to avoid?
Right. So when we recruit someone, I'm struggling to think, am I wrong in saying this? I think I'm right in saying this, that no one really enjoys recruitment. Certainly it's not something that most managers go, oh man, I can't wait to get into recruitment. For most hiring managers, so if I ignore the people, the recruitment professionals, but look at the hiring managers who are trying to get people into a new job role, the recruitment process is... it's a distraction from what they're doing on a day-to-day basis. It's something that takes them away. It takes their team away from achieving their other goals. And there are goals that either that they've set for themselves as business owners, as business leaders, or that they're trying to achieve for their bosses. And you've got recruitment as this big exercise, and it takes up this kind of unclear amount of time. Sometimes you find someone first time, sometimes it derails you for a lot longer than what you wanted. And so, of course, there's this temptation. As soon as you find that first great candidate, you kind of go flying with that person. You say sorry to the rest and get on with it. You get back to your business as usual. But in doing so, you're missing this opportunity to avoid the same stress repeating itself in future. Because if we can stay in touch with those candidates, the ones that are really great, the ones that are shining, and the ones that we weren't able to hire, and it could be for many reasons. It could be because you've only got one position, and they're number two or three. Sometimes it's clear that number two. Sometimes you've got two people, and it's almost a toss up. But so you're making a decision that you don't have enough positions. Sometimes they might choose another role. Sometimes there might be some event outside of your control. They might have lost a family member, or something else has happened which is completely outside of the recruitment process and has taken them out. And so if you can stay in touch with them, you have this opportunity to basically avoid all the stress I've just talked about from reoccurring in future. Not that it won't reoccur and that you won't have to hire again. It's that when you do hire again, you'll have this opportunity to use this person that you stayed in touch with and not and essentially, at least on that one occasion, and hopefully on more and more occasions as you have more of these people, you'll avoid that stress and can move quicker, which is just a huge, huge benefit for you and your team.
Love it. And it's something that I think we sort of picked up, particularly when we were researching how to do a better job of recruitment. I think the book that really solidified it for us was How to Hire A Players by Eric Herencole, where he kind of talks about this concept of building that network of great people. And he talks about it has been the farm team. But often he talks about it in the context of just generally identify great people out there by attending conferences and all these sorts of things. Whereas we've really taken it to mean the people who went through the recruitment process that we, for whatever reason, as you say, and there's a variety of different possibilities, we didn't then immediately hire, but wanted to keep in touch with them. So give us some examples, like, does this really work? Some people will be thinking, well, it sounds like a lot of effort just to keep in contact with people, and on the off chance that maybe they might be able to work with you in future. So let's explore some examples to demonstrate that.
Cool. Well, we've certainly got a few in our business, and I'd actually say you're probably better linked in. So why don't you share some of the one in sales, and then I'll give an example in engineering where we've done it in a slightly different way.
Yeah, sure. So typically when we'll do recruitment for sales roles, and we've talked before about our recruitment process in previous episodes, but I remember a particular recruitment process back in 2018 where we ended up with about 5 candidates that were really, really great, and I was excited to hire. It might have even been 6. And at the time, we only had 2 roles available. So after a lot of umming and erring and going back through our notes and scores and so on, we picked 2 of those 5 or 6 great candidates, and but approached the other 4 and said, really sorry, didn't make it this time round. Not our first choice, but you did really brilliantly. Here's the things that we loved about what you did, and then we offered, we'd like to put you on our farm team, and explained what that meant, keeping in touch. But I remember one particular candidate from that. I think it was about 6 months later. So 3 months later, I know that, because we kind of checked in every 3 months. 3 months later, she was in a new role and enjoying it. And I remember her just saying that coming and working with us was kind of like there were 5 things that were on her list of perfect dream place to work, and she felt we would tick all 5, and she managed to find a place that I think ticked 4 of the 5, and so went to work there and was happy there. And so I sort of checked in. It's like, oh, great, and so on. And yeah, we're doing this and da da. And then I think it's probably another 3 to 6 months before we got to a position where we could hire again. We had enough sales calls, demonstration calls being booked that we felt confident that we can bring in another person. And so I sort of made sure that I had my check-in calls with all the people on the farm team. And this person in particular was my number 1 choice from then that group. And so I said, this is the situation. There's no pressure. I appreciate that you've only recently started in a new role, and so it's got to be the right fit for you. But we've got a role available, and we'd really like to offer it to you. And so I remember she was kind of thinking about it, because it's tough, right? You've only been working at this new role for 6 months. And you kind of don't want to let she didn't want to let them down. She's a very loyal person, and also felt, is this great? This isn't great for my CV. There would be a question over why only 6 months there, and so on. So it took a bit of soul stitching for her, but because she was confident that we were the right fit. We'd done a good job through the recruitment process, and we've done a good job in then nurturing her as a member of our farm team, having those conversations, giving her transparency that made her even more confident that we were the right fit. She did take that decision to hand in a notice at the other place and come work with us. And she's been, one of the best hires we've had. Like, it's, I feel like we say that about a lot of our hires, but like, she's stayed with us all that time, still with us now, and has filled a number of key roles or worn hats that have helped us to grow the company and to deliver a lot of value. I think that wouldn't have happened if we hadn't have stayed in touch. We'd have missed it out completely on her as a candidate, but also we'd have had to kick off the recruitment process all over again. And for that role, I seem to remember it taking about three months, maybe slightly more. I think we kicked off that recruitment process in about sort of June of 2018, and we had our new starters start in September 2018. So it's a long slog to get the team members in. Whereas with her, I think she probably only had 2-3 weeks notice, something like that, to kind of hand in. And in fact, I think contractually she hadn't been there long enough for that to apply, so she could have just left, but she wanted to make sure that she did good handovers and all these sorts of things, which is often a common feature of real A players. They don't want to leave their other employer in the lurch. So that was really amazing, and saved us months and made sure that we were able to get a really awesome hire that got started really, really quickly. What about on the engineering side?
Yeah, so excuse me. I know one of the things that I'll be honest, I kind of often envy when I look across at the sales team is that we do get such high quality candidates for every time. I know Alexis, he's maintaining quite a long list of candidates that if and when we are essentially needing to get people started, we'll go straight to them. And that's going to save us literally months. I mean, this working out how to put up the job ad. Do I need to change it from last time I did it? Who's going to run the recruitment? How am I going to outsource some of the first steps? It's a huge time saver. And I know that this has been really, really well maintained. Now, to be frank, in engineering, even though we often have over 1,000 candidates, the quality of the ones that come through by the end, I'm looking for some very specific attributes, where I'm looking for people who are both very, very talented when it comes to development, and they're able to move really quickly, move independently, handle both kind of small coding challenges and big architectural challenges. Because we've got a small remote team, I need them to be able to be independent. And I'm looking for ones that are incredible communicators, both so they're able to communicate well to us, when we're dealing with stuff in Slack, but also because part of their job is documenting requirements and in a way that has to be clear for different team members, and it really holds them back if they don't have these two traits. Now, unfortunately, that's difficult to come by, and so by the end of the process, I'm not normally only looking at a few candidates who I'd really want to add to my team, and so I have normally made the hire, and then there have been some candidates that have made it into the farm team. Now, at this point, if I'm open, I don't think that I've hired one of the team members on the farm team that came from the recruitment process, but there is another angle where they also go into the farm team. So there's a second place, which is essentially anyone that leaves the company also goes onto the farm team, assuming that they've left in good circumstances, which I think has always been the case. And so we had a challenge a couple of years ago, and we'd just come through COVID, and it had been a challenge for the team, challenge for the business. We'd had to adapt and work on some different types of work than usual. And one of our engineers had left, and he'd left because he actually wanted to start his own business. And there are many things that we can offer you the opportunity to do in AirManual, in our other business, SpiderGap, but we're not quite at the stage where we allow you to go off and do your own venture. So it's something that we massively supported him in. As soon as he made that aware to me, his coaching calls, his one-to-ones, we were talking about how to make that work for him, how I could support him based on my experience and so on. And we left on great terms. But just in the same way as people that have gone through the recruitment process, we stay in touch and we reach out to them and make sure we've got a call in the diary every 3 months. And in doing so, we're able to stay aware of what's happening. What are they enjoying the new role that they've taken on, which, maybe the role after a job in our company, or the role that they've taken on instead of a role in our company. Do they still have the same career ambitions that they did when you last spoke? That's huge, and it's not always the case. Are they looking for additional work on the side in case you've got little challenges? And this is what happened is we actually got into a position where we were hiring a couple of new engineers, but I didn't have the capacity to support them at the start alongside some of the other things. And there were ways it could have managed, but it would have been a derail. It was actually at the point in time where we were setting up AirManual as its own business. And as you can imagine, that's a pretty involved job in itself. And I was essentially looking for someone who would be able to look after the new SpiderGap candidates. And because I had this person that I was reaching out to, I knew where he was. I knew that he was setting up his own company, but he was slow playing it, and he would be interested in other roles. It meant when this thing came up, and honestly, the day that I realized that I needed to bring these new candidates in, bring them up to speed quickly, I was panicking. I was like, I don't know how I'm going to make this work. I'm essentially going to have to do 2 jobs at once. This is not going to go down well with the wife, with the family, or anything else. But literally, like 2 hours later, I was like, reviewed my options, remembered where David is now. I reached out to him the same afternoon. He came back to me and said, "Yeah, I'm happy to do that. Happy to take that opportunity and help you out over the next couple of months." And yeah, he came in, and wow, the stress that solved me was epic. It was a real game changer at that moment in our history.
Yeah, I think that's a great example. It's interesting. There's I think we have. I do remember there was a farm team candidate on the developer side that we did work for with a period as well as a separate thing, as another example. And on the sales side, I think we've had two other examples where we've either hired them or they've done some work for us or whatever. I've also actually had members of our farm team who I've referred to others, either to work on contract basis or as employees, which is always really nice because one of the best things that you can do for a friend or a fellow business owner or whatever is like refer good talent, and yet it's hard to do. And so on a couple of occasions I've done that, and it's it's great thing to be able to help out someone else. And it's entirely possible that if either it doesn't work out or they work there for a few years and then they're looking for the next challenge, you've still got them back in that loop. And so I think keeping those relationships and being able to manage that is just so valuable and useful. We've seen loads of power for that. And it's also really, I find it personally great for my mindset, because it means that rather than thinking, oh, if we end up with too much demand, I'll then struggle with supply. Like, if we end up with too many, leads, then, oh no, I'll have to sort out what we do with our sales team, or if we've got, too much other work to do. Like, and yet when you've then got a decent, what we'd call a farm team, a group of candidates that you're keeping in touch with, that you think are fantastic and enjoy talking to, and they're smart and you'd love to work with them and so on, makes it really easy to both think about like, oh, well, if I manage to grow the business a little bit more, then I can hire this person, which is a really great experience. And actually, I found it also useful for mindset around performance management. So if you're tolerating people in your organization who aren't quite up to scratch, or there's friction that's being caused because they're not a great culture fit, it's much easier when you have other people on the bench ready to go in when you're thinking, should I keep this person? Because if you're in a situation where you haven't got anyone on the bench, then you hold back, right? You go, oh, well, maybe they'll be all right, and maybe it's not too bad, and as long as they're performing, as long as they're getting their jobs done and whatever. Whereas when you've got great people on the bench that are so keen to work with you, and you're keen to work with them, then it's easy to then feel like, actually, I should have that conversation with Jenny because I've seen a few negative behaviours against our values, and then you have that conversation, they improve it, and that's fine. But it stops that mindset of just thinking, oh well, I'll tolerate a bit longer, right? So I think that's really, really powerful. Now, we're talking about sort of really nurturing a group of people over a period of time. Why isn't it just enough just to reach out as and when you have a future role? Because you might say, oh well, the example that I gave where took someone through the recruitment process, June to August of 2018. We didn't have a role available, I think, until June 2019, so 12 months later from when we kicked off the recruitment process. I could have rejected the candidates in August and then just not been in contact for nearly a year, and then say, hey, I've got this role available. You remember that you're a great candidate going through that. Why isn't it enough just to reach out as and when that's the case?
Well, in some ways, it's just like nurturing your personal relationships, your friendships, your any kind of relationship you have. And if you have a really strong friendship with someone and they disappear for a long time, I've got a friend who moved over to Australia from the UK, for example, then sure, you can lose touch for a long period and then reach back out and rekindle, though you've missed a lot and there's a lot of catch up to do. But the people that are coming through the process, yes, you've formed a relationship with them through that activity, through those engagements. But to then kind of go silent, essentially the last thing they remember is being told that they didn't get a job, and you haven't followed up after them to even understand how they took that and what happened next. And for all you know, after that they had a terrible few months, and you essentially you weren't there. You were off doing your thing, and then you came back to them when it was convenient for you. And you can see how that feels. It's like, sure, if they're in a position where they happen to be actively looking for a job, then it might be, oh yeah, I could consider reapplying to you. But it's not a, oh wow, you've been there, you've cared about me for the enough to essentially go above and beyond what I would expect from most jobs, from most hiring managers. You've taken time out of your calendar once every few months to speak to me. You understand the challenges I've had over the last 3 months, and we've already talked about that. I already feel confident that if I was to join, I would be well supported, because I feel like I'm well supported even when I'm not working for you. It's a completely different situation, different environment, and the likelihood that that will then convert, or that they will, either become a hire, or that they will support you, help you in any other way they can. It's just radically different. So it's not that you might not get lucky by reaching out again to someone who went down the that path, but it's a much, much, much more long shot. And I'm just saying this actually from the candidate's point of view. From your point of view, however much you thought they were a great candidate 12 months ago, if you haven't spoken to them for 12 months, you will start second guessing yourself, and you will find it really hard to compare them to new candidates who've come through, and you may be going, well, the role has changed a bit from what I was hiring into last time. And so it's giving you both that kind of that confidence that they would still want to work for you, you would still want them, and if it's done well, it's almost a brilliant, let's go. If it's not, then it's almost starting the engagement from you, and that's not that much better than starting the recruitment process.
Yeah, indeed. No, I love that, and I think, as you say, it's on both sides, right? From the candidate's perspective and from you as the employer. I think I feel honoured to have supported and coached and chatted to people through some very difficult times in their lives, post that, because often one thing is when someone's looking for a role, not always, but sometimes they haven't got another one, and so it is a difficult time. And so while sometimes that can lead to some awkward conversations, it's I don't have another role to immediately offer them, and it's not my place to try and support everyone in the world that hasn't got jobs and so on. So sometimes that can feel an awkward situation, but sometimes it is useful to be able to just show a bit of compassion and perspective as an employer, even giving them coaching on things that might help for future, but also, as you say, like being able to continuously evaluate like whether this person be a good fit. There are some candidates I've had on the farm team where actually over the following catch-ups I've identified there's some red flags here that we didn't catch before and might be okay, but make me think they're talking down a lot about maybe the clients that they're now working with, or the employer that they're working with, or they don't seem quite as proactive and focused on improvement as we previously thought. And so that's it's like a long-term reference game, and so that's useful. But also like life situation, like knowing that, for example, actually they've moved and now are no longer looking for a remote role, or they've been working in a remote role for 6 months and decided that's not a good fit for them, and as a result want to do something else. That's useful context when I then start to get to a point of, I've got a role available, and I'm thinking who might be available for this, both in terms of whether they're a good fit, but sometimes timing. Sometimes I've had people on the farm team where we say, actually, I still think they'd be a really good fit for this, but they probably need another 3-6 months to deal with the situation that they're currently in, and and they're in, perhaps they're in a role currently, and all these sorts of things. So I think it gives you useful context, and as you say, for the candidate, it makes a huge difference. I don't think the examples where we have hired afterwards, I don't think any of those would have happened if we just reached out at the point that we suddenly had the need. They were all employed doing other things by the time that we were ready, and so there was an element of sales and encouragement that happened to attract them over. So I think that had to happen. So we've kind of alluded to how we do it a few times, but give us a really clear approach to what's the process that we use for staying in touch and making that easy and not awkward, given that, as you say, your last interaction was rejecting them.
Cool. Well, as you say, we've kind of covered it at high level, in kind of implicitly, and it's a simple process. But I'll cover it just these 4 key steps. So first of all, you've found out at any point in the process that you've got someone who was coming across as great, as someone that you really wanted to keep going and would love to be able to hire if you had the position. And it's not going to happen. So the first thing you want to do is explain that you do want to stay in touch and why you want to stay in touch. So essentially share, look, sorry, it's not going to go through. What I'd love to do is just be able to stay in touch with you kind of every few months or so. And no big commitment, but just so I have an opportunity to find out how you're doing, whether the new job role is working out for you and so on. And so you can also hear what's going on in our business, because my hope is that there'll be future opportunities for us to work together. And assuming this is someone who is a great candidate and that they've been enjoying the process too, this won't feel like a silly request. This will feel like oh, wow, yeah, sure, that's not something I normally ask for, but of course I don't know that my new role is going to work out 100%. And so far I'm seeing, great things about your company and you personally. I would be happy to stay in touch with the usual response. So you're explaining why you want to stay in touch, and you're doing this ideally at the last point you're speaking to them. If not, you're kind of reaching out to them after. At that moment in time, you also want to schedule that first catch-up. So you want to get your diaries out and go 3 months into the future and just put it in there. And it doesn't matter that you don't have complete visibility of what meetings you have at that moment in time. It's relatively easy to move a meeting which isn't convenient, versus having a task in your diary where you say, I will reach out in 3 months. Trust me, that will get delayed. It will get deprioritized. It will get ignored a few times before you two get the calendars out. Whereas if it's already in the calendar, it will get moved. This is a same principle that happens actually in sales. You always want to get the next call nailed down. It's not about being aggressive. It's just about appreciating the reality of how people manage their calendars and their tasks and the fact that people get busy. So you'll both appreciate that it's just in the calendar for a few months' time. Then the third step is just to actually catch up. So every 3 to 6 months, you'll be having a conversation with them, and you'll be doing, as you said, you'll be finding out how their role is, how they're doing, whether anything has been going really well or really badly, anything that's causing them any pain or grief. Anything that's changed in terms of their career direction. This is another reason we've eventually had people drop out of the farm team, is because they've realized they wanted something else than the roles that we were hiring into and might have opportunities for in future. But you want to keep having those calls, and we've always found them to be really enjoyable. They're both a great chance for ourselves to reflect and share, and also a really great opportunity to stay in touch with people that we valued as individuals. And on each of those calls, you're continuing to arrange the next call each time. And then finally, they're going to exit this process, and it's going to be in one of two ways. Either you're going to hire them, so the ultimate win for both parties. It's really paid off, and that's happened for us numerous times. Or you're going to stop following up because there's a good reason to do so. And that might be that you no longer feel that they are the candidate that you're looking for. It may be that they've indicated that what they're now looking for a career isn't something that you would be able to offer them. And there are other good reasons, and you will work them out. But when it feels like, I honestly don't want to follow up with this person because I honestly don't feel like this is someone I would want to bring to my team, then that's okay. And you let that relationship kind of die down and fizzle out, and you maintain the relationships which are working well. And hopefully over time, you get into a position where you do have multiple, maybe 3 or more people that are on your, what we call a farm team at all times, so that you wouldn't expect that everyone on your farm team would be able to jump ship and join you straight away. But when you do have that opportunity, you're able to reach out to them and find someone who's able to join. And that's the ultimate win.
Yeah, I love that. And it's as you say, there are loads of reasons why there are various reasons why you might not then carry that on. I think one way is you kind of let that relationship slide, like just not arrange the next call. My preference, the classier way, tends to be like particularly if you no longer feel like they're a good fit. What you can always do is, let's say that it's on the second or third or fourth call, so it's either been 6, 9, 12 months. I think it's okay to essentially say to them, it's been really good keeping in touch with you. Unfortunately, we still haven't got to a position where there's a role available that I feel like would be a good fit right now. So we'll not arrange subsequent calls, but feel free to keep in touch. And at that point, then it's like you're kind of letting it slide at that point, and there's just an appreciation on both sides. But the flip to that is, if you want to stand a good chance of being able to still bring them into the organisation, keep up those regular conversations and use that simple process as Paddy described. So thanks for taking us through that, Paddy. We've essentially, we've set out why we think it's a really powerful approach to keep in contact with people who leave your organisation, people who went through your recruitment process but you didn't hire. Keep in contact, keep nurturing that relationships, and as a result, hopefully, you get an opportunity to work together in future, reducing the amount of time you need to spend recruiting, which, as you set out before, Paddy, is a source of stress for teams that are busy. When you've got other team members available, ready to go on the bench, it makes it a lot easier. We've got some great resources to cover this. So we've previously talked about a checklist for the recruitment process, which goes through how to make sure that you end up with an A player. We've got a checklist for reviewing a job candidate so that you can efficiently do a good job of making sure that they are a good fit for your organisation, the skills. And we've got a new checklist available in our templates area, which is a checklist for staying in touch with a great candidate, exactly as we've talked about in this episode. Links to all of those will be available in the show notes. Now, as regular listeners will know, we also run a weekly webinar on how to free up 15 hours per week and remove the constant stress of running a business without slowing down growth. If that sounds interesting to you, come check it out. It's typically every Wednesday at 1 p.m. UK time. You can find out more and register at www.airmanual.co/webinar. And a final note for our podcast listeners, as a new podcast, we need your help. If you found the content today valuable, please take just 1 minute to leave us a review. This will help the podcast get more visibility. It'll allow us to help more people. And if you're consuming this on social media, please do reshare it, repost it, subscribe and so on. It honestly makes a big difference to us and we really, really appreciate it. Otherwise, until next time, have fun.